Thank you for that. My name is Nick. It's an honor to be up here in front of you tonight. I'd just like to say a few thank yous. First, to my entire family, my parents, my aunts, my grandparents that made trips from all over the place today to come support me. To everybody at the CFC that for the last month, when my world's basically been falling apart, has picked up my slack. Done the things that I should have been doing but hadn't been able to, sent out reports, stuff like that. And especially to everybody here at Celebrate Recovery. Whether you've called, texted, prayed for me, your support has been vital for me for the last month. And if you're wondering what can I do, the truth is what I need you to do for me is pray for me. If you don't want to pray for me, an iPhone 7 would be nice. But my name is Nick Campbell. I'm the clinical director at the Christian Family Center. I'm also the only DUI treatment provider for multiple offenders in Lawrence, Bleckley, and Emmanuel County. And I'm on the board of directors for the Georgia Addiction Counselors Association. God has put me in a spot where I'm able to talk about addiction, to help people through addiction, to do what's basically my passion in life, is to lead people to a Christ-centered place of recovery. I'm able to do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm very thankful for that. I'm always thankful to be able to come out here. I'd been scheduled to speak here 2 months ago, and when this happened with Mary Louise a little over a month ago, I just felt when we had that memorial service that Monday night, I felt God speaking to me that He still wanted me to speak. This is not what I had envisioned myself doing. The last month has been an emotional nightmare. And this is the first time I've really spoken at any length, especially in front of a crowd anywhere near this size, since it happened. I'm nervous right now. I don't really know what's going to happen tonight. I just know that God's here and this was His plan for me. I think back to all the times, and I said this at the memorial service, I'd stopped by Mary Louise's apartment on Monday afternoon on the way here, and she could barely get out of bed. Her hips were hurting. Her breathing had gotten so distressed, and I almost tried to convince her not to come because it would take such a physical toll on her. But never once did she miss a Monday. She always knew that when Monday night rolled around and it was her turn to sing, that she could be a blessing to somebody and that she could show Christ through her. And she's really been my inspiration the past month to do things like this. I've done some volunteer work with the Georgia Overdose Prevention Coalition. Different things where when she was down and out and was hurting very badly, that she always wanted to make sure that she put her pain aside and her suffering aside so that others could see Christ in her. As I said, I am the clinical director at the Christian Family Center and a DUI treatment provider. What that means is that for the vast majority of the people I speak in front of, they either need me to need my signature to go on past, to graduate, to get their license back, or in the case of the CFC employees, I hand out payroll on Fridays, so they come see me for their check. What that means is I tell a lot of jokes that may not be that funny, but they laugh anyway. So I don't know if some of my jokes aren't funny at all. I think they are because everybody laughs to be nice and to get paid. But also, this is really the first time I've spoken without Mary Louise here, except for the few minutes I spoke at the memorial service. And I don't know if any of y'all could tell it, but I really appreciated her being here because I'll chase rabbits, I'll get off track, I'll be long-winded and ramble, and she would just stare at me. She'd sit right there where Lisa is. And anybody else get that stare? And that was my signal to either get back on track or wrap it up. I got that stare a bunch. One time Keith was talking, he was speaking on a Friday night, I think, and he said the key to a healthy relationship is knowing 2 words: yes, dear. Anything your wife says, anything your girlfriend says, you answer with yes, dear. And I'm sitting there in the audience, Mary Louise would punch me in the ribs, quit. And she said, you hear that? You hear that? I said, I've heard it for 5 years. And so she said, you better learn to listen to that. And so a few nights later, we were going out on a date, and she changed clothes about 4 times, and was looking for something to wear, and came out, and she popped her head into the living room, and said, honey, does this make my butt look big? Yes, dear. I didn't just get a stare, I got something thrown at me. But I do miss her being here in more ways than you can imagine. the spirit she brought here was so great, and I just want to say a special thank you to Julie. When God told me I'd be speaking tonight, the first person I called, and really the only option for doing music, was Julie. Julie and I wrote the song Mary Louise and I played so many times, Rainbow After the Flood. We wrote that together about 3 years ago. We've been playing together for 4 years. And if you listen to music from Mary Louise over the past 12 months, after she started working with Julie back in September, October, working on her breathing, working on her voice, it really got improved. If you listen to some of her music from late last year, she doesn't even sound like the same person that was singing 3 and 4 months ago. And so I just have to say a special thank you to Julie, not just for working with her, but being willing to come out and sing Mary Louise's songs to an audience that's used to Mary Louise singing it. I can't imagine how hard that must be to stand up there. But just thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing that. And did she sound great? I usually teach here several Mondays out of the year, and what I'm normally doing is standing up here talking about one of the different steps and just doing kind of an outside look. It's what I do in most of my classes. I'll kind of throw some of my stories in there, but for the most part, I'm just teaching. I'm going to take a little bit different approach tonight. Whenever I have people come, we've got pastors that come and counsel at the CFC. We have different people that just want to come and talk to the guys that are in the program, and I always sit down with them and I say, first of all, above all else, just be real and be genuine. I don't want the chairman and the deacons to think that he's got to be able to relate on a personal level and go in and say, hey man, I used to grow a bunch of meth too. Some people agree meth. But I don't want there to be a disconnect, because the truth is, if you're coming out of addiction, you don't need somebody that's been there necessarily. Like what I'm going through right now, I don't need somebody that knows what I'm going through in order to be comforted. Unless you watched your fiance held her hand while she died and went and picked out caskets the next day, which was your 6-year clean day when you're supposed to be picking out wedding cakes, chances are you don't know exactly what I'm going through. But I don't need you to. I need your prayers and I need your comfort, just like somebody coming out of addiction needs prayers, needs comfort. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to take a little bit different approach. I'm going to talk about what's going on in my life, how the past month has really affected me, how I've been able, through the grace of God, to stay on track, to stay clean. August 21st was 6 years clean for me. I can't. If you'd have seen me 6.5 years ago, you'd really understand the miracle that is for me, not just to be standing in front of you speaking, but to be standing at all. But when I started thinking about what to talk about, I went back to what we sang about so many times in Rainbow After the Flood, which is the story of Noah. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the entire story. I think most people know what Noah and the Flood's about. Am I right? Not the Russell Crowe version with the rock men, but the story out of the Bible. Because my life is basically mirroring what's going on with Noah's at this point. And I think if you're coming out of addiction, or if you've got a loved one that's going through addiction, it's probably going on with you too. For the first thing, Noah, God turned his life upside down. He told him, you're going to build an ark, which there'd never been rain before, had never seen an ark. He tells him you're going to build an ark, take 2 of every animal in there, and go shut yourself off from the rest of the world. That's a big change to make. There's no way that Noah was prepared for that, and his life wasn't going to be the same after he did it. On August 20th at 5:47 a.m., my world turned upside down. Several years did too. I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one that was close to her. I know, and I've talked to so many people that she's touched. I know there are dozens of people in here that were personally affected by her death. But for me, my world turned upside down. If you're coming out of addiction, when you make that decision, either because handcuffs are on you, either because your parents threaten to cut you off, or just you make the decision you no longer want to do drugs anymore, that turns your life upside down. Like Noah did. Noah had to separate from everybody he knew. And if you're coming out of addiction, that's what you're going to have to do too. There's going to be people you know that you can't associate with anymore. The same thing if you're here for codependency. If you've got a loved one that's going through addiction or is in early recovery, addiction affects the family in a massive way. There's no way when you were giving birth to your child that you thought you'd have to go through what all goes into having a child that's an addiction. So your world gets turned upside down. But the second thing that really stood out to me is after he was in the ark, after he went and shut himself off from the rest of the world, that's when the floods came. For 40 days and 40 nights, water fell from the sky. At this point, nobody had seen rain before. There was water that was springs from the ground that came up, but there was no rain. Noah's in an ark with absolutely no idea what's going on. He's seen nothing in his life that can compare to what's going on right then, and nothing could really prepare him for what he was going to be going through. I played football in high school. I remember when we were in the state tournament my senior year, our coach gave a really big inspirational speech. He said, everything you've done up until this point, the JV games, weightlifting during the summer, conditioning during the spring, 2 days in camp, the hours and hours and hours of practice you put in, it all leads up to prepare you for this. Now that you've done all this work, it's time to go show what you've done and to let the fruits of your labor pay off. That's not what happened to Noah. There wasn't anything Noah could have done in the natural to be able to prepare for that flood coming down. All he could do was stand in that boat, stand in that ark, and trust that God was going to bring him out of it. That's where I'm on day 37. 37 days ago, the rains are still falling on me. I don't know what's going on. At times I feel emotionally unstable. I cry when there's no need to cry. All this stuff's going on, and nothing I've done up to this point has been able to prepare me for it. I've had loved ones die, but never anything like this. There's nothing that I could do to prepare for these 40 days and 40 nights. All I can do right now is trust God that he's going to bring me through it. Amen. He did it. He did it for Noah, and I know he'll do it for me. And if you're going through addiction, those first 40 days and 40 nights, especially if you're on methadone, Suboxone, something like that, when those physical withdrawals hit, if you've never gone through withdrawals before, there's nothing I can tell you. There's no pain or state of mind that I can relate it to that's the same as going through opiate withdrawals. And I know alcohol and meth withdrawals are up there too. Oxycontin was my drug of choice. It nearly killed me several times. And I know what that pain of withdrawal is like. If you've never gone through it and you're going through it right now, that's a flood in your life. And chances are you have no idea how to come out of it. And you've got two options. First, you can give up. You can go back and get high because if you take another oxy, take another methadone, then the pain will go away. You can either give up and do that, or you can trust God that his promises are real and that he'll bring you through everything. He's kept you alive to this point. And same thing if you've got a loved one in addiction. I don't know how, I can't even imagine the pain it must be to look on from the outside and watch somebody go through and tear their life apart and destroy their life and destroy their family and look at it from the outside and not be able to do anything. You're in the same boat with us. All you can do, there's nothing you can do except for trust God that he'll bring you through it. I started reading the flood story 2 weeks ago. I read it in depth. And after the rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights, the waters didn't start going down. The rain stopped falling, but the waters kept rising. They rose till day 150. I feel like I'm about at that point. Like I said, I'm on day 37. I'm praying to God that things get better soon. I pray to God I can sleep at night and quit having these nightmares waking up. I was in Kroger the other day. They have their Taste of Italy going on. Good stuff. All kind of prosciutto and cheese. But one of Mary Louise's favorite dessert was tiramisu. And they have it during their Taste of Italy, and it's about the only time they have it in the bakery. And I'm walking by there on Friday night, and I see it, and tears start falling, because it brought back all those memories that whenever Taste of Italy came around, it meant I was spending half my paycheck to load up on this baked dessert so that she would, and I could tell by the look on the employees at Kroger's face that they're not used to people having such an emotional reaction to their bakery. So I felt out of place, but I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know that when I walked by that it would have that effect. And there's been a lot of things that have gone on in the past month where it just hits me, and I've got to let the tears flow. I'm surprised it hadn't happened so far tonight. But when the floods stopped coming, the waters started rising, and they had to stay in the boat. There was no way around it. He had to look out. There was nothing he could do. Even though the storm was over, the after effects still remained. In addiction, post-acute withdrawal is about the best thing I know to relate that to. But not just that, but just finding out all the stuff you've got to do once you decide to live a life clean and sober. Once the physical withdrawals stop, your mind's still not right. Your brain has to rewire itself, depending on what kind of drug and how long you were doing it. It could take 12 or 18 months just to where your neurons fire like they're supposed to. If you look at a PET scan of a brain with somebody with clinical depression and a PET scan of a brain of somebody that's 12 months off meth, they look exactly alike. It takes a lot of work for the brain to process and to heal from coming through any kind of addiction. And that's tough because you've already made it through the hard part. You made it through the detox, made it through the withdrawals, but now you've got to stand here and just take month after month after month of not knowing when you're going to get better. I know 9 or 10 months in for me, I'm still not able to remember things. I still wasn't able to, to say, I'd have words come to the tip of my tongue, people's names that I knew all my life, and I couldn't verbalize it. And I just wondered, is this it? Is this what life's going to be like? Am I going to go through the rest of my life without being able to use my brain at full capacity? And all I could do was trust God that He would bring it through. And there's nothing that fixes that at the time. If you're going through it right now, you've not only got post-acute withdrawal, but chances are you've got some damage that you've done at home that you've got to fix. Whether it's bills that haven't been paid, relationships that need to be restored. Even though the floods are gone, even though the addiction's over and the withdrawals are done, those waters still rise, and you've still got stuff to do. And all you can do, and I'm telling you this from experience and from seeing it on a daily basis, trust God to get you through it. When you start trying to do it on your own and say, it's not happening quick enough, I'm going to go do it my way, that's when relapse happens. I wish I had, Keith calls it, I got this disorder. Where you think after about 3 months that you've beaten addiction and that you're good enough to go out and do it on your own and you don't need help anymore. When Noah was in that ark at 150 days, he couldn't do anything on his own. He couldn't put on a pair of swim trunks and go out diving. He still had to trust God through that. And then after day 150, that's when the water started to recede. And I won't go into a whole lot of detail on it, but it took right at a year after the flood happened, but a solid year before the waters got down far enough where he could send out a dove and it wouldn't come back, and he knew that the water was gone and the land was dry. It's going to take time. I know it's going to take time for me. When Noah got out of the ark, I can only imagine what his life was like, not knowing anything of what to expect. All the people he knew were gone. Life as he knew it, he was still alive. He was still alive and he still trusted God, but life as he knew it was done. Nobody was there that he knew. He had to basically start over. And that's really the point I'm at right now too, is that I know God will bring me through this, and I know that He's got a plan for me. I don't know what His plan is. I have to believe the music ministry is part of it, but I don't know what His plan is. I know He'll get me through it, but it's not going to be the same. The person I love is not here anymore. But he had to go out and just trust God that when he started over, as long as he kept that faith in God, that God was going to, just like He brought him through the flood, brought him through on the ark, that God was going to keep pulling him through and bless him. And it said he counted righteousness, or his faith was counted as righteousness to him. He had faith in God that when he got out of the boat, that it was still going to be okay. And that's a hard faith to have, and I'm just being completely real with you. It's hard for me to look into the future and say, what's the future going to hold? Because my life's in chaos. Not for me, not a drug-induced chaos, but just a turmoil from losing the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. If you're coming out of drug addiction when you get at about that year mark, that's when you get back on dry ground. And you've got to make that decision that life as I knew it was over. Those old friends I knew, the parties I used to go to, the character traits I used to have, you've got to start a new life. If you go back to the old life, that's a recipe for disaster. And I'm not talking about going back to using drugs. I'm talking about going back around the same people, going to the same party scenes, just that whole lifestyle, everything that involves the addict mentality that doesn't necessarily relate to physically putting drugs or alcohol in your body, you've got to make that conscious decision that you're turning away from that. And life as you knew it, it's over, but life with God's ahead of you. God can bring you through it. He's got plans for you. If you'd asked me in a year clean what I was going to be doing, this was not going to be it. I planned on getting clean enough to get out of Dublin, get out of Soberton, and go back home. But that wasn't God's plan for me. And I've heard John Walker say it multiple times, if I could have made a list of what I wanted from God at 1 year clean, I would have sold God short. I'm blessed beyond measure. I love my job. I love the people I get to work with. Right now I'm going through a storm. Right now it's tough, but I still hold on to that faith that God's going to pull me through it. And Julie's going to go on up there. I'm about to close. I've gone through most of what I'm going to say in my head several times before tonight. And I've been able to make it through most of it, but this part I've never been able to make it through. So Russ, you probably want to come on down here. There's one more thank you I want to say. To the Bowells. Sorry. When I came over that Friday night, we knew she'd relapsed. When we went to the hospital, we held her hand, watched her take her last breath, and the days and weeks that followed, when all of our lives changed and were turned upside down, I can't imagine the pain and suffering you were going through. All I know is that I became an emotional wreck. I was completely unstable. I lost. I couldn't say 10 words without breaking down in tears. And while you were going through the loss of your daughter, you took time, so much time to comfort me, to be there for me, to make sure I had a place to stay, to make sure I was fed. And I can't tell you, I'll be eternally in your debt for just allowing me to love your daughter. Thank you so much.
My name's Russ, and I don't suffer from a lot of things that y'all do, but I suffer from a lot of things you do. I was abandoned as a child. It changes your mind, and I'm going to tell you, there's something that Nick talked about